welcome everyone. I'd like to say just welcome to this unique presentation, remote interviewing during a pandemic. It's not every day that you are in a pandemic, and since we're here, this is going to be an informative time to dive into ways that we can interview effectively from home. So I'd like to get a feel for the room before we dive in. Who has experience interviewing already, and who is brand new to interviewing in general, period? So while you're kind of engaging in that chat and letting us know, I'd also like to call out at the bottom of every slide, you'll see a handle, Stephanie M. Toma. Last name is like Thomas without the S. I encourage you, if you find anything particularly useful, or if you just want to kind of shout out what we're going over tonight, feel free to shout me out in your Instagram story. It's always great to get the word out. I'd love to be able to share this presentation with others in the future. I made this presentation specifically for Girl Genius Magazine, and I would like to start off by saying thank you for having me. So yeah, let's see. Please, if you're able to mute yourself, we'll continue to go through our slides here. Thank you so much. So I see Olivia's done interviews in person and one-on-one video during the pandemic. Sarah's done a few, Lily has done a few, Elise has done both, and Angelique has some experience with in-person, but not through a camera yet. Okay, Caitlin has a little bit of experience. Haley's very new. Okay, well, you are in the right place. The tips that we'll be going over today will be applicable to pretty much all of our experience levels here so far. So just to let you know a little bit about me, you may be wondering, wait a second, who is this person who's talking with me about remote interviewing? How is she the person that should be speaking on this topic? So I am a networking strategy, career coach, and hypnotherapist. So I love to go beyond the surface into, we'll be going into some holistic ways to get ready and take care of our emotional health during this pandemic that will set us up for success as we remotely interview and job hunt. I'm also the author and founder of Confident Introvert. My book just came out this Monday. So yeah, I'll go into that a little bit more later at the end. And then I'm also on the board of directors of the Young Professionals of San Francisco. I went to the University of California, Santa Barbara, studied the study of people, sociology. And one of my main qualifiers here is I've attended and hosted over 1,000 events. I've partnered a lot with recruiters, and as a career coach, I know a thing or two about interviewing and making that first impression really count. So a few items that we'll go over today include gaining a sense of career clarity, personal branding basics, self-care, very crucial right now. And then that will set us up for success with going over the bread and butter remote interviewing tips. And I want to just call out right now and appreciate everyone that took the time to fill out that survey. We had over 150 responses, and I went through the comments of each of them, and I added as many answers to as many questions as possible throughout the presentation. So thank you for that. And before we begin, just let us know in the chat, what is your biggest interviewing struggle? And what is one intention that you'd like to get out of our hour together? So yeah, feel free. There could be a slight lag. Webinars are like that sometimes. So I would love to read your responses to your biggest interviewing struggle and what you'd like to get out of today, but I will move on to the next slide. So chances are, from the survey, it looks like many of us attending today are currently in the process of perhaps looking for our first job or first internship out of high school or out of college. But yeah, I'd love to get a feel for who's in the room to make sure that this is really catered to you. So where do you fall on being, let's say, currently employed or currently unemployed? So we have one attendee, Abby, biggest struggle is being able to see how the interviewer is reacting over Zoom. Let's see. And Claire, not knowing how to answer a question I didn't prepare for. Okay, so that level of spontaneity and confidence in how we show up online. And Ashley speaks a little too much, in her own opinion. And then Angelique, talking or coming up with answers to their questions. Crystal speaks too much too. Okay, and not knowing how to answer a question. Let's see. Anna says being able to think on the spot. So again, I think we do have a lot in common here, where we're questioning how we show up and if it's landing, or even how we feel about it. So let's see. Nuha has struggled with introductions during virtual interviews. And yeah, you're used to having a handshake, and guess what we're not doing these days? We are not doing handshakes. So yeah, there's a whole different dynamic that we are getting used to right now during these virtual interviews. And as more and more roles turn remote, we'll be able to implement these tactics more and more. It is kind of the beginning of just a new way that we approach work and internships. So another thing, I know many of us are looking for internships, but if you're looking for something that's not an internship, do you want something full-time, salaried, benefit, permanent? Permanent, I should put in quotes, because what is really permanent? Or are you looking for something that's part-time with consistent hours, maybe freelance or contractor work? Maybe you want to start your own company. So it's also great to just kind of call out, put what you want into words, and so we can get an additional feel for who's with us today. Okay. Yes, I'm reading through some more of these answers to the last question as we begin to have this new question roll in. So let's see. Okay. Yeah, so Abby's asking about some tips about how to get internships in high school. So I can speak to the interviewing piece, and that's a topic that maybe at the end, if we have time, that's a little more niche, we can go into that as well. Okay, Allison's looking for a different full-time role. Shibali is a student looking for something part-time. Nice to, yeah, have some spending money. And Anna is interviewing for research programs and hoping to get a part-time job. Okay, so we have a variety right now. And another thing that I like us to put words to is, what is your dream role and industry? So let's clarify, this is not what does your best friend, what does your parent think you should do? This is really getting in touch with if you could have a dream job, a dream internship, what would you be doing and what industry would it be in? And feel free to share just the first thing that comes to mind. I think this is really important to put words to, because sometimes we can get really caught up in shoulds, and that can put us on a path that then years later we figure out, how did I get here? And I don't want to be here, when maybe in our heart of hearts we knew that early on. So now is a great time. I love that there are so many current high school students, so many current college students that are joining us today, because yeah, you have a real opportunity to get clear on what you want so that you have a better chance at getting that thing. Okay, Ashlyn, definitely a tech entrepreneur. I'd love to develop a product that can help people. Okay, see, and sometimes we know some people have a laser focused, I want to do exactly this. Others are like, I have a more vague idea, and any answer that comes to mind right now is fine. We are all starting from somewhere. Caitlin says, data scientist working with artificial intelligence, machine learning at a tech company, maybe Google. Hey, yes. And then Claire, environmental scientist and also an athletic director. You can do it all. Certainly, there's a way to get involved with both now. My recommendation, if you're still in school, is to take advantage of all of those internships that are conveniently located on campus. Working in the space industry, says Emily. That's awesome. Sophia, I'd love to do biochem research or become a physician. All right. Olivia is a part-time senior, so a part-time job, but something in STEM overall. So that's awesome. Knowing where you want to be headed and taking baby steps towards it. If maybe, let's say, you need an advanced degree to be able to fully immerse yourself, maybe there are more entry-level opportunities to begin to get involved now. So Nora says something in marketing, specifically digital marketing. Okay, well, keep the responses coming. I will not be able to read them all, but I think it's really great just to, speak it, put it out there. So now we're moving on to how we present ourselves online. So recruiters will be looking you up online. If they are interested in speaking with you, it's rare that this will be a step that they do not take. So that's why we go over this piece. So I'd love to know which social media sites you are currently active on. So no need to type out every platform. You can use shorthand. So 1, if you type 1, that means you're on LinkedIn. 2, Facebook. 3, Instagram. 4, Twitter. 5, TikTok. 6, Snapchat. 7, YouTube. Okay, Shivali is super active on Instagram and LinkedIn. Me too, actually. And then let's see, Angelique is on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Okay, Catherine is on Instagram and Snapchat. Let's see, Sarah's on also Instagram and Snapchat. Nice. And Olivia's on all except for LinkedIn, hasn't made a LinkedIn account, doesn't know where to start. Oh my goodness. That is something that is worth starting. I would say take a look at my LinkedIn account if you'd like to get some inspiration. I think that it's crucial if you do have career ambitions to have a presence on LinkedIn in terms of a profile that has as much information as possible. So that would be another webinar, but for now, I will strongly recommend that you get started there. Let's see. And then Sophia is on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Nice. Oh, Crystal says I'm underage for LinkedIn. I didn't realize that there was an age barrier. So, all right, scratch that. If there is an age barrier to LinkedIn, adhere to that and just mark your calendar for whatever birthday you're able to create that LinkedIn account. All right. So thank you for these responses. So now many of us listed more than 2 platforms, and my challenge to you is to choose a couple that you'd like to be active on and dedicate a little bit more time to those. And I mentioned here to make it polished, public, and active. So yeah, I would certainly recommend getting a feel for which platforms you like to be on and making them public. So for example, if you are on Instagram, there's a way to showcase, let's say, the personal and professional development work that you're doing, such as attending this event tonight. And if you're involved in any extracurriculars, just making that public, really taking control and honing this opportunity to just be visible. And I also recommend in terms of, so let's say it's public, let's also make it active. So I'd say an active social account is one where you're posting on the low end twice a week. It doesn't need to be daily, but it really can't hurt if you have the time and if you enjoy creating that content. And when I say polished, that means just, posting with an element of care, knowing that it is public, and if it's something that you wouldn't want a recruiter to see, then maybe just, I'm all about self-expression, but if you would feel uncomfortable with someone seeing that, then just kind of being aware of that and posting with an element of care. Okay, so I see a question here. Is it worth having a personal Instagram and a professional Instagram? So I do believe that the future of work will be merging the personal and the professional. And what I mean by that is, especially as many of us are sheltering in place and our working space is our home space and vice versa, I believe that having that dichotomy of, oh, this is my secret self and this is my public self will begin to diminish more and more, where literally you're seeing part of my apartment right now behind me. We are getting more acquainted with each other, especially during these changing times. And I do foresee that as a shift that will continue. So yeah, I'm of the opinion of integrating our personal and professional selves and not necessarily having an online presence that's so polished that it doesn't look human, that it looks like a bot made it. We're allowed to be real. Okay. How can I feel comfortable with people I don't know following me? Okay. Yeah, so some people are more private. So actually that's a valid question. That's perfectly fine. I will say it depends on the platform that you're on. So for example, on LinkedIn, typically that is a two-way street. There is, and then on Facebook, for example, if you you have to enable the follow function on that platform. So again, it really is up to your comfort level. There isn't totally a one size fits all, but my general recommendation that I think will apply to most people is to have two active platforms that integrate that personal and professional self. Okay, so this slide it's a lot. It's a little extra, isn't it? So 5 headshots in a row, and they're all they're all of me. So the call to action here is to, number one, make sure that you have a headshot. So who here currently has a headshot? And it could be, so there are plenty of career fairs that will offer headshots, or networking mixers as those begin to open back up again, where let's say it'll be their student rates, for example. Let's say it's $50 for 10 minutes. That can be really, it may sound like a lot, but actually it's not a lot when you think about how much it would cost to hire a professional photographer. But it's the gift that keeps on giving. You can use it again and again and again until it literally doesn't look like you anymore. So let's see. Oh yeah, Ashlyn has a more casual one. Yeah, and again, it's important to know the industry that you'd like to be in. So if you are going for startup culture, you don't need to look super corporate. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend wearing a hoodie. Hoodies, that was kind of a thing maybe 5-10 years ago. So yeah, just kind of having a t-shirt that's a solid color is important. You can also DIY this, let's say with your smartphone, or if you have a friend or family member with a professional camera, you can play around with just ensuring that you have some space, right up here on either end, and that the picture cuts off below your bust at your upper torso. And you can actually submit a non-professionally taken photo to, let's say, Fiverr, and pay as little as $10 for someone to professionally edit it, and it will look like it was taken in a studio. So there are lots of options that we have. So are filter selfies appropriate? Ashley asks. I would say, putting filters, if it obviously is filtered, then it will not. Yeah, I would just, if I had to give a blanket yes or no, I'd say no, let's not do that. Like studio and professional lighting that is timeless, right? And not kind of like the trendy filter of the week will suit our purposes best here. Okay, so now who's new to interviewing from home? I mean, hey, a lot of us are. So here are ways to structure your day, especially as we're working from home, networking from home, getting more comfortable with all of that. So again, this is kind of moving on into the self-care part of our webinar. So you'll notice a clock. And the reason why that's there is because what can help us is having a level of consistency and choosing a time in the AM to wake up every day. Because sometimes, let's say if we don't have a place to be, or we only schedule or have interviews scheduled for later in the day or the evening, it can be easy to pretty much sleep our days away, which maybe at first can feel luxurious and then it gets depressing. So my recommendation is to set a time and to try to make that the time that you wake up most days, if not every day. So what time are you currently getting up? Let's share that in the chat. Okay. Oh, this is back to the headshot. Angelique says that I have a picture that my mom took of me in front of a library, but it's not necessarily professional. If you really like the shot, then you can actually, again, send it to Fiverr, or there are online tools that you can use to remove a background. So yeah, definitely make sure it's current though, because if it doesn't look like you currently, if you changed your hair color or you look obviously older, then it will be time to take a new shot. Okay, Abby gets up at around 8:30. Nice. So yeah, keep those times coming, 9 to 9:30. And then you'll notice this figure stretching. So this is a call, especially for those of us that are not naturally morning people, to start your day with something that energizes you. So for example, on Instagram, you know that my handle is on the bottom of every slide. And here's another handle, Stoic Plank. So every morning I do a plank, and it's live on Instagram, and I read a Stoic philosophy quote from the book The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. And that's been a practice that I started when we first started quarantining, and I've been doing it for 89 straight days. You know, I have the biceps to prove it. And that's an example of a habit that you can begin to just kind of, yeah, have an element of consistency, something that gets your blood pumping, that you can do that's reliable and consistent every morning. Another one that I love is jumping jacks. There's also an Instagram account that I follow called Morning Wiggles, where you just put on some feel-good music and wiggle it out, and you're ready to start your day. And then you'll also notice this chair icon. So how many of us, when we are interviewing from home, interview from anywhere in the apartment or the house? Do you just mix it up? So if you do, it's not like it's, you know, my recommendation, if you do that, is to consider one dedicated space where you know this is my productive chair, this is my productive room, because especially as many of us are spending more time at home, it can help us stay focused and present by having that distinction. Even if we don't have a whole lot of space to work with, we can say, okay, it's this part of the room in this chair. And then let's say when I'm not sitting in this chair, or when I'm not in this part of the room, then I can be in a different, more sort of, fun and free mindset. Okay, and then this last one you'll see here is a face-to-face icon. So one of the questions that we got in the survey, people were interested in that face-to-face component. And should I have my video on? I feel kind of nervous with video. Is that necessary? And there was a study conducted this year in Finland by the University of Tempe, I want to say, and their research showed that it does make a difference, that even if we're making eye contact virtually, that it does activate our central nervous system, and it helps us feel a sense of connection like it would in person. So of course it maybe is a little stronger in person, but virtually we are still getting that same effect that helps us connect with people. So Emily asks, is it bad to have a solid color virtual background if your background's actually busy? That's a great question. That was a common question in the survey as well that I was reading about over the past few days. And if you do have a busy background, I would typically recommend that you clean up your space, make sure that it's nice and tidy, because then others aren't distracted and you are not distracted. But sometimes we don't always have control over our surroundings. So if that's the case for you, I would say yes, choosing a virtual background that is, maybe it looks like a kitchen. I kind of like those, or it looks like an office. Just kind of looks like a nice living space, or a solid color. You can't really go wrong with those two options. I saw one, not in an interview context, but maybe you don't want to do Tiger King stuff, because that's fun for friends, but maybe not in an interview context. So more self-care, it's really important to take care of the fundamental aspects of how we show up in the world and online. So this is from my book, Confident Introvert, and it's called the Daily 3-2-1. And you can start your day with this or end your day with this. And it's a tech-free hour, and it's composed of 30 minutes of reading, 20 minutes of journaling, 10 minutes of meditation. So let us know in the comments, do you currently have a daily habit of reading, journaling, and or meditation? Let's kind of see who's in the room in terms of having those habits established. And I'll kind of break it down a little bit more as well. So 30 minutes of reading. The average American reads 19 minutes per day. But if you read more than that, studies have shown that your life expectancy goes up when you read 30 minutes a day, 2 years. So that's an extra 11 minutes a day, and don't worry, you pretty much get it back with a greater life expectancy. So please open up those books, and it's a great opportunity you can read self-help. You can, if it's fun for you, read a textbook. If you, it's just an opportunity to have input where it's a little bit more passive, and you're taking in information. And then 20 minutes of journaling, that's your output. So if we have any stressors, there's something called narrative therapy, where when we get all of our thoughts on paper, we're able to begin to release feelings of anxiety because we've been able to articulate a storyline. And our brain no longer has that sense of dissonance of trying to figure out, wait, how do I feel about this? And it becomes more clear, and you're able to experience a sense of detachment from that stress by having written it out in more of a story narrative therapy format. And then last but not least, 10 minutes of meditation. So you've had your input, your output, and this is kind of consolidating all of that and allowing you to clear your mind. And let's see. So Anna tries to read and do yoga every day. Very nice. Sarah started journaling over quarantine. See, we pick up some nice habits sometimes when we're at home, and try to journal for 10 minutes a day. And I always try to read for about 30 minutes. Sarah, that's awesome. Like, you already know the daily 3-2-1, you're living it. And then Nuha, I started journaling every now and then. I've also found coloring books are great for stress relief. Yes, that's another great one. That I would even say that's a form of meditation. It can be when you're really in that flow state and you're able to focus on your breath or focus on the coloring and not really entertain any rumination or thoughts that don't serve you. Okay, Olivia's become a huge reader over quarantine, reading almost one book a day. My goodness, you're such a speed reader, Olivia. What's your secret? Can you tell us? And okay, Grenor, I've started working out in the morning. Very nice. Okay, so who's ever had a Zoom hangover? Not to confuse with any other type of hangover, but I'll just kind of let you know. Yeah, so a Zoom hangover happens. It is a term now that you'll see in Urban Dictionary and perhaps the actual dictionary in the years to come. But it's this concept of going to virtual event after virtual event, virtual meeting after virtual meeting, and feeling a sense of fatigue and overwhelm. So yeah, definitely let me know if Zoom classes can do that too. Colleen says, that's me today. And yeah, so lots of people are resonating with the Zoom hangover, and I have an antidote. Have a solitude sandwich. So typically, if you are in classes back to back to back, there will be maybe 15 minutes. So instead of, let's say, having more screen time in that 15 minutes, do yourself a favor and have a solitude sandwich where the virtual activity is the peanut butter in your sandwich, and then the solitude of going for a walk or even just standing up and stretching on either end of the activity is your bread. So you'll want to play around with different ratios and see what works best for you. And again, this is another concept from the book as well. Okay, Yin says, I love a real sandwich during breaks. Hey, I mean, this could be a metaphor or taken quite literally, really. And Colleen said, I have to wake up at 6 a.m. for a meeting, which ended at 9, and then had a conference from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Yeah, you're doing it. So definitely make time, especially when you have those long stretches, to restore your energy and be away from a screen for a little bit. All right, so this is another question that came up. How do you get the interview? And okay, you're communicating right now with a networking coach. So I would certainly say get out there and virtually network and get to know people whenever there is let's say an event like this, even if you don't have breakouts. I love events that have breakouts and one-on-one sessions. I'm hosting one next week, a virtual speed networking session. So yeah, definitely ask if you'd like to know more about that. But even if you don't have those breakout sessions, you can, towards the end of a webinar, let's say comment, hey, I'd love to stay connected. Here's my LinkedIn. Or, kind of be proactive and take those opportunities to connect with people. And then perhaps from there, you can schedule a one-on-one virtual coffee date. And that's kind of what I'll leave you with on that topic for now. That would be a different webinar. But here's some common blunders. So initially, when I wrote up this presentation, I like to be positively skewed. So I just wrote you a list of the things to do. And then it became very clear that many of you were looking for, hey, tell me the things that I should take extra care to not do. So upon special request, let's see, Crystal wants to know about the speed networking thing. Okay, so if you'd like to know about that, you can sign up even right now or bookmark, go to facebook.com/Stephanie Thoma. And Oh, so then slash events, and it's happening on Wednesday. So definitely you can sign up for that. It's free and you get paired one-on-one. So anyway, back to common blunders, what not to do. So let's not rely fully on notes. So there's a very short story here. So when I started my first corporate job, there was a contractor, this woman that I really looked up to and respected, and I went into a meeting and I had notes, and she just looked at me and said, "Put those away." And I asked, "Why?" And she just kind of looked away and didn't explain it, which I thought was a little weird. But years later, I understood what she meant. When you are fully relying on notes, you're not making eye contact, let's say virtually or in person. When you're relying on notes, it's hard to feel really confident, because even if you know what you're talking about, it's a crutch to be constantly looking down at notes. So again, you're not making eye contact. Your body posture may become more inverted and less confident and empowered. So it's a good habit. You know, we are taught in school, take notes, but think of the interview more like the test, not in a way to stress you out, but more so in a way that lets you know that, you know, it's time to put the notes away. We know what we're doing. Another common blunder, what not to do, is simply not being prepared. If you don't know the mission statement of the company, that's something to consider. It takes oftentimes going on the website, going into the about section, and knowing the mission statement, and then also knowing how your personal values fit in with that mission statement. Because oftentimes people are not simply hired within a role or an internship because they know, let's say they have an aptitude for the skills needed. Oftentimes, there's so many other factors that go into play, such as, will I get along with this person? Are we value aligned? So when you speak to, okay, like I can do X, Y, and Z, I can, you know, file papers, or I have an expertise in artificial intelligence, or whatever it is. Let's say that a lot of people, you know, have those areas of expertise. What sets you apart is being able to connect on that deeper level of truly knowing and resonating with, and being able to articulate how you align with the mission statement. And then, okay, please don't take the call from bed. So especially with video, I've already mentioned that having your video on is really important for being able to have that virtual eye contact, to have a greater sense of connection. But yeah, if you're in bed, it doesn't look like you put a lot of effort into it, right? And yeah, let's take the time to just make sure that we have a polished appearance, and we're seated upright. All that good stuff. What if I'm sitting up in bed? Okay. Yeah, I would say still. I think that's a joke. Okay, Ashley says, oftentimes I don't know when I should wear corporate attire. Ooh, we will go into that in a future slide. So hold tight, Ashley. And Claire says, when I write notes, it's to prepare, and then I don't use them in the interview. Very nice. Okay. So here's another thing, what not to do, expecting the interviewer to lead. So I think that our traditional schooling oftentimes teaches us to be a little bit more passive. You go into a classroom that could have anywhere from 15 to 500, you know, some colleges might have super large classes of 500 people. And that can be a passive experience. And then when we're interviewing, you might think, oh, it's like they're the teacher, they'll facilitate. No, this is our opportunity to show our leadership skills off, and to be able to initiate the conversation and say, hey, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me, and maybe anticipate certain questions instead of waiting for the cues, because oftentimes that will indicate your level of proactiveness within the role or the internship, and it'll let the interviewer know that you don't need to be micromanaged, and that you won't always be, let's say, waiting to be told what to do. That if there is a lull in your activity, that you'll be able to find out how to fill that time productively. Okay, Ashlyn asks, what types of questions should we expect at personal interviews? So, okay, we'll go into some commonly asked questions a little bit later. And then, okay, back to what not to do. Let's not eat during our interview. So this ties it all together with the solitude sandwich bit. Literally, have yourself a sandwich or something, right? During that break, even if you have back-to-back-to-back interviews, typically when we're being kind to ourselves, right, we do have a little bit of a break in between meetings, and making sure that you have snacks then, because it's not an ideal situation to have your stomach growling during an interview. That can be distracting to more likely you, unless you are extremely hungry. The interviewer may not hear it, but it's just a feeling. It's not great to have that feeling. We've all been there. I'm having a flashback right now to being in college and having my stomach growl in the middle of a lecture. And I was like, wow, like, could everyone in the lecture hall hear that? Maybe. Claire, how about eating during class? That's a different webinar. It really depends. Let's see. Then also sleeping in and missing your interview. So that's all the more reason to try to maintain some level of consistency in your waking and sleeping schedule. And then arriving late due to tech difficulties. That's something not to do. So I recommend, if let's say you are engaging in an interview, or you know that you'll be speaking and taking a more active role, attempt to log in about 30 minutes in advance. And you may not be able to actually enter the virtual room, but you can be in the waiting room, just kind of hang out and be prepared. Or if you're attending something you know that might be a little bit more passive, then aim to log in 15 minutes early, because you never know, if you try to log in 1 minute before, 2 minutes before, there could be a delay, there could be a lag. And these are things that we typically can avoid with some preparation. Yeah, Ashley asks, what happens if there's an unexpected difficulty that you didn't know would happen? Okay, so in the case that you can't get into your virtual meeting, I would say have tech backup. So let's say have your phone fully charged, even if you don't think you'll be using it, and also have your laptop fully charged. And I do recommend, I'm skipping ahead right now, but I would recommend making sure that you are on your laptop. It can be more level than, for example, holding your phone. But guess what? If anything goes wrong with your laptop, being able to, let's say your Wi-Fi isn't working, your phone will typically let you log in without using Wi-Fi. You'll be able to use data on your phone to enter a Zoom meeting that's time sensitive. So again, having that level and that time buffer of preparation, and having 2 fully charged pieces of tech, and attempting to log in early. And if you get kicked off during an interview, I think it's great to be proactive, to know of an alternative way to reach your interviewer. And you can even say, oh, hey, in case of any tech difficulties, what's a secondary way that we can get in touch? So then if anything does happen, you'll have that information in advance, and you can, let's say, initiate a phone call, or a different way of communicating. What types of questions are best to ask? Okay, I love this. You're anticipating what we'll go over. So in a nutshell, this may be the slide, hint, hint, that you'd like to screenshot. So these are remote interviewing tips that I will go into more depth about in the slides to follow. So yeah, we have research the company, know frequently asked questions, test your tech, and use a laptop when possible, dress up, sign in early, and run the show. Keep a resume on hand, make eye contact, clean, quiet location, brag, be present, and follow up. So I'll give you just one more moment to screenshot this, maybe shout it out on social, on Instagram stories or something like that. Okay. And I'm going to count down, and when I say 3, we're moving on to the next slide. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So research the company. We went over this a little bit earlier when we talked about things not to do, and this is the thing to do. So research the company, and something that I'll add is to also research the person interviewing you. They're doing the same with you. It's totally fair to look them up on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find things in common with them too. I think it's great to be able to tell if you went to the same college, or if, I mean, that's a really great one, especially if you're in college now and you went to the same college as someone who's interviewing you. That's something that you can definitely build rapport around and connection around, and knowing the company's mission statement. And also maybe on your interviewers' social media, you see that they are a runner and you run. There are little things like this that you can find out in advance. So, okay, Catherine asks, will you share the slides? So I will not be sharing the slides, but there will be, I believe that this recording will be shared. It'll be unlisted on YouTube, but you will have access to be able to look at these slides after the fact. So Crystal asks, do you have any tips for not sounding fake? I have a really bubbly personality that can come off the wrong way. So I do believe that authenticity is key, but sometimes when we're nervous, a bubbly personality can turn into a more sort of manicness, right? Because it's energy. But when we have a fair amount of energy paired with excitement and nerves, yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from, Crystal. So using certain grounding exercises, like establishing that habit, maybe first thing in the morning to start your day, of reading, writing, meditating, getting some energy out by engaging in physical activity like doing a plank or going on a walk, or things like that can help. If you do have a naturally bubbly personality, please keep that beautiful bubbly personality that you have, but there's a way to rid yourself of excess nervous energy that can kind of come across in a way that is less than ideal for you. All right, and know the frequently asked questions. So here are some examples of frequently asked questions. There will always potentially be curveballs, but these are ones that I found are extremely common. What's been your biggest accomplishment? Give me an example of a time that you turned a problem around. What's your management style? How do you like to be managed? Why do you want this job? Please be prepared and know why you want this job. And you'll be asked, why are you the best person for it? And this is not a time to let our imposter syndrome or lack of self-confidence get in the way. It's like, no, like you're in that interview, you are the best person for the job. It doesn't mean that other people are less qualified, but you've done your research and you know why you're value aligned. And yeah, you are a contender and you believe in yourself, right? So it's the time to sell yourself. We'll go into more detail about that sort of confidence piece later, but here is the number one question that you probably will be asked at the end. Do you have any questions for me? I will give you a hint of what not to do. Do not say no. Do not say, oh no, I have no questions. Thank you for your time. Because that shows a lack of inquisitiveness and a lack of preparedness. So having some questions and keeping in mind that, let's say that you've been running the show from the beginning and asking, it's fine to turn things around in a curious way. You can ask, hey, so I'm curious, I've noticed that you've been with the company for 7 years. What drew you to the company and what has made you stay? Or you can ask, is there anything that you wish that you knew about the company before you started? Sometimes we think that as we are being interviewed that it's a one-way street, but oftentimes it's also an opportunity to connect with the person that is interviewing us and to learn about their experience. And this can actually let us know of red flags. If your interviewer cannot say anything positive about the company, it's something for you to consider. Yeah, and so do you have any questions for me? Some great questions that I recommend asking have to do with people's experience at the company. And again, this gives you valuable information about the corporate culture. You can ask, so what's the policy in terms of working remote versus being on site? I mean, that is a fair question. Things are in flux when it comes to remote work, and a lot of companies are gearing more towards remote work. You can also ask about community building and also ask how you can contribute. Ask, what are some ways in which the company could be, let's say, more like, how can I create a sense of community within the department? Or how could I show you like that I'm going above and beyond? Or what is something that's on your plate that it would be nice to have help with that no one has yet been able to help you with? So then you get to hear very specific pain points that may not be in the job or internship description that directly speak to the recruiter or the interviewer's daily experience. And let's say that there's a task that they don't love doing that you could easily do, then you're able to give them that reassurance in the interview process. Okay, Anne asks, how many questions would you recommend asking? So uh, it as this pertains to the very last, do you have any questions for me? Have at least a couple. And if it's helpful to you, write down some questions about the interviewer and about the company and about the experience and about how you can be of service, how you can help, um, how you can go above and beyond in your role. Or here's another question: is there anything that is not listed in the job description that, on second thought, would actually be really helpful for someone entering within this role to contribute to? So make out a list in advance of questions of that sort, and just internalize them, and just ask them in a mock interview with a friend or a family member, and get comfortable giving a voice to these things. All right. Oh, Ashley asks, is asking too many questions at the end a bad thing? So this is an opportunity to gauge, again, the nonverbal cues, assuming that it is a video interview. I would say if you have a list of a dozen questions, especially if you only have 5 minutes left, that's not going to be the best time management, right? So you're also showing off your time management skills and capabilities during this closing question. So this is typically meant to be a closing question. Do you have any questions for me? The correct answer is yes. And if you need to buy yourself more time, if you're feeling a little bit frazzled, a rule of thumb, restate the question. So if someone asks, do you have any questions for me? You can say, yes, I actually do have a couple of questions for you that I have been curious about throughout this interview process. Hey, that just gave you some time to think. And oftentimes when we're nervous, we may speed through answers to questions, uh, or we may, you know what I mean? Just kind of speak in a really fast manner. So taking the time to pause, and it may seem like you're speaking a little bit maybe too slow, when really it's at a comfortable pace for your listener. So yes, asking too many questions, it's only really, a quote unquote bad thing if it it takes you beyond the scheduled time of the interview, because keeping in mind that maybe they have another meeting after the interview. So let's say after you ask one or two questions at the end, and let's say you have 1 minute left, you can say, so if you do have more questions, say, I'd love to be respectful of your time. I know that we have a couple minutes left. So is it okay if we go over one more question that I have? So that way you're showing that you're responsible and you're good with time management. Okay, so Elise asks, what would you recommend us to not ask? Ooh, so I would say rules of thumb of things to not ask would probably be anything that is construed as, kind of the basic questions that are standard to not ask, in terms of, let's say, you can ask, oh, when did you graduate if you went to the same college? There's context there, right? Oh, like what year did you graduate if you want to, but asking how old someone is, asking if someone's like in a relationship, there are things like that. There are some boundaries that we will keep even as our personal and professional selves merge, especially when we're making a first impression, keeping the conversation skewed more about the work and about the values within the company will serve us best. So Ashley asked, if the interviewer asks us, is there anything else you would like to tell us? Is, how would you respond to, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? Oh yeah. Okay, Ashley. So if you are asked at the very end of an interview, is there anything else you'd like to share? You can say, yes, I'd like to state that I'm really excited about this particular role. And after speaking with you, I now learned XYZ. And you're basically telling them why you're the best fit for the role. Even if you already, throughout the interview process, said, oh yeah, that really resonates with me, after you were told certain things, this is your opportunity to bring it all home. And when you make your closing statement, is there anything else you'd like to share? So if you are short on time, typically you will not get the question, do you have any questions? Because you don't have time for those questions. But if they ask for any closing thoughts or anything else you'd like to add, then this is the time to reassure them, assuming that you know that you want the interview. or want the role. And again, abundance mindset. It is a two-way street. If you get a bad feeling like, ooh, like I actually don't think this would be a good fit, then no need to do this for the sake of doing it. But it can also be good practice. But being able to reflect back why you're a great fit. Okay. So testing tech, again, this is the inverse of what not to do. So make sure that we are logging into our tech sooner rather than later to be able to catch any glitches, having that cell phone charged as a backup, having our laptop fully charged in preparation, and being open to moving to new areas of Wi-Fi capability within the place where you are taking that interview. Okay. Ooh, yeah. So we have two questions that are very similar. Nuha and Anna are asking about introducing yourself. And so tell me about yourself. What do you say to that? So, okay, again, I'll tell you what not to do. Do not say, oh, well, I was born in 1990X or 2000 and, then I grew up in this area and we had chickens in the backyard and, that's a nice story, but it's not relevant. So what you'll want to do instead is when someone asks to tell me a little bit about yourself, you can say, so I talk about how you got started within that industry or that role. You can talk about a past internship, or you can talk about a time when you shadowed someone on the job, or a time when you volunteered at an organization. And this is the time to share not your life story, but your story of key points that are relevant to that particular role that you're interested in. So that's something to also have top of mind as well before you go into a virtual interview situation. And you'll notice this slide. I'm just going to go back to, you'll see Lunch Club, Bumble Biz, Shaper, networking. So I'm going to intermix. I'm a networking coach. So these are some apps that you may consider downloading where, of course, if you're probably 18 or older, so if you're in high school, please bookmark these apps as something to download later. But for those of us tuning in that are in college currently, these are great opportunities to be matched with other professionals or emerging professionals once per week for video calls where you can network and get to know people at a variety of different companies, and maybe even agree in advance to conduct mock interviews together where it's not as comfortable as doing a mock interview with a friend or family member because you do have that element of it's someone that you don't know yet, which is typically what it'll be like when you are remotely interviewing. Yeah, Crystal says not old enough again. That's perfectly fine. I love that you're here, Crystal, and everyone else who's in high school. This is great information to keep in the back of your mind, and a lot of these tips will still be useful to you as you go for internships. Okay, dress up. Dress up, people. This is not a time to be in our PJs. So, take the same level of care that you would take if you were, let's say, going to an actual interview. So what that means is, again, you don't necessarily need to be suited up, so to speak. You don't necessarily need to be wearing formal attire. The world of work is shifting, but having an element of polish and making sure that you have that you're put together, right? So if you'd like to accessorize a little bit, definitely brush your hair, wash your face, those very basic things. And we did go into virtual backgrounds before. And yeah, it is okay to use a virtual background, but to be aware of what that background is. It may not be a time to broadcast your favorite reality TV shows, or maybe not the best time to broadcast just anything that could distract and take away from you and your message is something that you don't want to do. So Ashley says, or asks, is it appropriate to only show your face? Can you elaborate on that question? You mean only show your face on a video call? So I would say it's a great rule of thumb to, okay, I'm going to show you what not to do again. Oh my gosh. If you can, I hope you can see me. Can you see me? Like, this is what you don't do. You don't get up super close where you can't even see someone's chin it's like, it's too close. It's uncomfortable. Are you a little uncomfortable? Sorry about that. Okay. Don't do that. And then another thing that you don't want to do. So you can probably tell that I'm leaning all the way back. And also, how relaxed do I look? It's like, am I interviewing right now? I'm just like, I'm slouching in my chair. And no, that's not great. So think of it, look at yourself before you go live, and you'll want it to look kind of like a headshot, right? With some space above your head on either side. And ideally, it'll end around your bust area. Head to shoulder, yes. All right, sign in early and run the show. So again, this is a little bit of review since we went over what not to do, but be prepared for anything that could go wrong technologically. Have a backup. Have a backup source of tech and a backup method of reaching the person. And if you didn't get that in advance, then let's say that you've signed in and it was scheduled for 11 a.m. and it's 11 and they're not in the meeting. It can even be useful because who knows, maybe you're in a Zoom meeting, they're in a Google Hangout. That happens somehow, sometimes. So sending a message at 11 or 11:01 saying, hey, I'm in this meeting, and share the link. Am I in the right place? Just to be sure that you are on the same virtual page. And yeah, run the show in terms of, it really depends on if this is an introductory interview. Typically those will be done, those could be video or phone. If you have the option, always select video. But running the show in terms of doing mock interviews in advance and having a set of questions and being really clear on what the company stands for. And I will say this could seem daunting at first, but the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes, and you'll need less and less lead time to be able to effectively prepare for an interview. All right, and this is another question that we got in the survey about, like, how do I give someone, this was the specific question, how do I give someone my resume when we're virtual? Because old school in-person interviewing, you might have a printout of your resume and give it to the person. And I would say in this day and age, especially as there are more initiatives to be green and eco-friendly, eco-conscious, that is not necessarily something that you need to do. And you can even say in an email communication for an in-person situation, say something along the lines of, okay, here's the digital copy of my resume, and for the sake of being green, I may not bring a printout unless you'd like me to. Is that okay? So just confirm, because not every company is totally eco-conscious, but I will say we're going in that direction where things are virtual and paper is, kind of less of a thing, but it's certainly less of a thing when we're virtual. But for your own sake, I would say having your resume in front of you, let's say I'd like you to have the key points and your strengths from your resume memorized. However, sometimes we get nervous, and having a printout of your resume available and maybe highlight certain points for you to quickly glance down at when you're beginning remote interviewing can be a place to begin. And then once you feel more confident and know your past experience, know your value, then certainly after a couple times with the resume, then take the resume away and allow yourself that space to restate the questions and to just know that, oh, no one knows your experience better than you. Okay. Ashley asks, should I offer my resume to the interviewer even if the interviewer doesn't request it? So typically when you have applied for a position, you maybe applied using your resume. So I would say, especially for a virtual interview, it's not necessary. But if you are going in person, so I am catering this presentation a little bit to when we will have in-person interviews again, then that's a point in time when you would ask about bringing a resume. Or if you would like to do your due diligence, you can always email before the interview, like, hey, would you like me to resend the resume? But it's redundant and really not necessarily necessary unless you are getting the impression that it would be helpful, that maybe they have misplaced your information for whatever reason. But typically it hasn't been misplaced because there's a level of professionalism. But then again, we're in a pandemic, and sometimes people are a little more scatterbrained than usual because of everything that goes along with it. Okay, Nora asks, for in-person interviews, is it true that you should put your resume in a cover and portfolio? So again, and I will say that I'm speaking to the norms within the US, right? So I will say within this context, it can't hurt to have a portfolio, especially if you're going for a more creative or technological sort of position where you're expected to show examples of various things. But that's something that I would take on a case-by-case basis, especially if it's an eco-conscious company. Then you can rest assured that they probably do not want your paper resume. And again, repetition for effect. Let's make sure that we have our videos turned on, because can you imagine watching this webinar and just hearing my voice, not seeing all these facial expressions? It helps us feel connected, especially let's take a moment to think of all those people living alone, completely alone. And it's an opportunity to connect with people and give people a sense of more normalcy during these times as well. So it's doing you and the other person a favor, helping you to connect on a deeper level with those nonverbal cues. Okay, and again, a clean, quiet location. And for those of us who have, let's say, people who live with us, or maybe there's construction outside, or there's a dog that's barking, we've all had those experiences when we're on video, when there's an unexpected noise. So I think it's great to be prepared for that. One way that you can prepare for that is, if you know that you're in a noisy environment, consider either getting a headset, or a less bulky version of that would be if you can just, plug in your earbuds as usual, and consider getting a USB mic. There are a few different types of mics. Condenser mics are really popular. However, condenser mics pick up sound 360 degrees. So if you're in a noisy environment, the sort of mic, USB mic that you want to get is a dynamic mic. And typically dynamic mics are used for live events because you don't want to pick up the sounds from the audience. And then typically, if someone has an at-home studio, condenser mics are really popular for podcasters. But I would say if you're in a noisy environment, just know that you don't necessarily want the mic that a podcaster has, because they're in their own studio, maybe without other people, and background noise as an issue. So Ashley asks, would it be appropriate for me to use my headset during a virtual interview? Yes, Ashley, it would. You can go ahead and use that headset, especially if it helps calm your nerves and put you at ease with any sort of anxiety around having unexpected noise. Then you're able to really control for that when you have, let's say, a mouthpiece that's right up there, kind of consolidating that sound. And I am advocating for having a clean environment. That's even great for your own mental health, really, to kind of clear the clutter out. But again, if you're in a shared space and you don't have that option of making sure that things are exactly as you'd like it, then that's okay. You can have a virtual background of a solid color, or maybe an office setting or something like that. And Ashley, no worries at all. I appreciate these questions. Please keep them coming. It's great to be engaged because you're here in real time. We're all here at the same time. So let's make this catered to you. Like, you showed up, bravo. So please keep these questions coming as they come to you. This is your time. So, okay, you'll notice this peacock. I want you to brag. So sometimes we have a tendency to downplay our accomplishments. Or here's a very common thing, right? In our resume, we'll say, okay, here are the tasks that I completed. I did this, I did that. And you might think, okay, I did everything to standard. You know what? That's not serving you. We want to go into how we exceeded expectation. And it's great and powerful to do that with statistics and concrete examples. So for example, I know that there's at least one of us who's into marketing and social media. I saw that from earlier. So what you'll want to do in that case is not just say managed Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, period. It's like, okay, great. But what were your results? Let's be really focused on those results. So you can say increased Facebook engagement by 600% in Q3 compared to Q2. So there's just an example of quantifying how you went above and beyond. It's really not worth it to say exactly what you did. And then again, if at this point in time you're not sure how you've exceeded expectations or standards, that's why it's so important to ask the person that you report to, wait, how can I help you? How can I go above and beyond, instead of simply doing the baseline of what's expected? Okay, Sophia asks, how do I brag about myself without sounding too cocky? Okay, so one quick way to consider doing this is when you're talking about yourself, some people will use qualifiers like did an excellent job on that task, or did, you know what I mean? You're using words, that maybe it's more of a brag when it's not rooted in concrete evidence. When you're using words like amazing, I did an amazing job. Or, and it's okay to think this. Please, I hope you do think this about your quality of work. But it's not going to be as compelling in an interview situation if you just say, oh yeah, I'm amazing at that. Or, oh, I'm the best. Like, I'm so good, just trust me, okay? It's like, no, we're not just gonna trust you. Statistics talk. So if you're able to say, it's the difference between in an interview setting saying, oh yeah, I'm the best. I always go above and beyond. There's so many questions. Excuse me, how are you the best? How do you go above and beyond? So don't beg those questions. Instead say, oh, so yeah, one example in which I went above and beyond was when again, we'll go back to the follower situation. So that's a really concrete example. Or let's say some of us are in STEM, so in a lab situation, you can say, I got like XYZ number more results compared to the last quarter. Or you can say that your like turnaround time on results was like, X percentage faster than before. Basically, you're showing how you being in that environment improved upon the existing status quo within that company or within that role. Okay, Olivia asks, do you think it's okay to put a lot of information on resumes? I've had a lot of leadership positions in school, but I don't want to make it too long. Okay, so it depends on what you define as a lot of information. Certainly when you have less than 10 years of career experience, which everyone here does, your resume should be a page. If it's longer than a page, it's too much. So some resume, and again, this is another webinar, and we can certainly, talk about this, and I'm happy to do another webinar, but yeah, some quick tips for resumes. Each position or internship should have in between 2 and 5 bullet points. Each bullet point should be a sentence fragment that's about 1 line on your resume. So that's just a very quick rule of thumb. Okay. Oh, Abby's asking about the facilitated virtual speed networking event. So young professionals, however you define young professionals, there will be, and let's see, in the chat right now, I'll just make sure that people have this. Use a loud typing. So yeah, take a look at that page, and it will be people who are usually in college and above, but if you're in high school, there's nothing that would not be okay for a high schooler to participate in. It'll just be, you'll be among the youngest if you are in high school. But yeah, it's an opportunity to talk about career goals and where we are at in our careers. So I think you're totally welcome to join and try that out and see how you like that. All right. So another rule of thumb, be present and restate questions. So again, this is review. When we talked about what not to do, this is what to do. So when I say be present, one of the common questions through those 150 plus survey responses, and I did go through all of them, was this idea of how do I keep myself from being distracted, especially if we're used to having, and show of hands, no shame in this, do you typically have 24 tabs open? And are you listening to music and also maybe kind of like watching a movie or, texting on your phone, and you're doing all these things at once, and it's just kind of how it is. Okay. So the first thing to do is to not do that. So, and I know that sounds simple, so I'll be more specific. Instead of having the several tabs open, and yes, I'm seeing right now that people are resonating with those tabs. You know what? Me too. Sometimes I have a lot of tabs open, but for example, right now, can you tell that I'm completely focused on you? I don't have any other tabs open. I am not on my phone. I'm here for you. So people can tell when you are distracted and when you are flipping between tabs and when you're listening to music. So treating an interview certainly like you're in person and like there's nothing else that you'd rather be doing, that you're exactly where you want to be, and showing that undivided attention. Okay, Olivia asks about the virtual speed networking event. So I would say, yeah, it's up to your discretion, whatever online events you'd like to attend. So this is something that I will just admit I'm not well versed in terms of online events. And if someone needs to be 18 or older, I would just default to most likely, like it's certainly safe to attend these online virtual networking events if you are 18 or older. And if you're under the age of 18, I would ask your guardian just to be sure that they are comfortable with it. Because yeah, that's something that will be different for the individual. And again, so back to the slide, restate your questions. So if someone is asking you a question in an interview and you don't know the answer right away, then give yourself time by restating the question back to them, and not being afraid to take a slight pause and to elaborate from there. Okay, Trisha asks, how should I respond to a question when asked what my biggest weakness is? Okay, that is another common question. And let's say that I would say this is an opportunity to perhaps talk about something that you're working on proactively. So this is not an opportunity to say, oh, I have a really bad habit of just texting all the time, even when I should be working. And then period, that's it. Yeah, no, that's not going to do you any favors. It's not going to help the viewer think like, oh, that's fine. It's like, oh, okay, ... What will best serve you is making sure that you bring up something. So for example, for me, and I wonder if anyone here can relate. So you're in STEM, but I will say, and again, this could be a self-limiting belief, but growing up, I gravitated more towards language. And when I started interviewing, I would be upfront with the fact that there are a lot of tech programs that I need to learn. So that's an area, and I wouldn't even say weakness, even if they frame it like that. Make things positive. Say, oh, my biggest area for growth is learning new tech programs in the user research space or whatever space you're looking to get into, and then say what you are doing proactively to work on that. So you're not just leaving it like, oh, I'm really bad at this, period. No, you're saying I have a room for growth and this is what I'm doing about it to get better. Okay. And last but not least, follow up. So this is another way that you can cast yourself apart from the other people who are interviewing actively for this role that you want. So sending an email to everyone that you interviewed with throughout the process, and to restate, it's important to address it to their name, and just to be safe, address it to their first and last name in case they're not comfortable on a first name basis with you. I will say it will depend on the company, but it's safe to do that, and to thank them for their time and say that maybe something that you enjoyed learning about them and their experience, or something that you went over within the interview that made you feel like this is a really great fit, that it's very synergistic. That's a nice word that you can use. And then you can close that follow-up email with, please let me know if you have any questions in the meantime, or what your timeline is looking like. And actually, let's take a step back. During the interview, do you have any more questions? Do you have any questions for me? Here's a great question. Yes, I'm curious about what your timeline's like for next steps. That is a question that sometimes you will not hear a recruiter necessarily tell you that up front. And it's a fair question, because what if you're interviewing with X amount of companies, and let's say that they need to hire someone in a week, or maybe they need to hire someone in 3 months. It could make a difference in how you're going to gauge that level of fit. Catherine asks, when should you send a follow-up email? Okay, so you should send a follow-up email. I would say this is no weird like 3-day rule situation where like we're not playing hard to get, you're not playing games. No, this is a time to, you can send it. I like to not hold it over my head and potentially forget. So I will send it after the interview, but making sure that it's thoughtful and that I've reread it, at least a couple of times, no typos, that's important. But yeah, there's no reason to really wait too long to say thank you. And Ashley asks, should each email have a personal note for each of the interviewers? It really depends. If it was an interview situation with, let's say, a bunch of people, a panel of people, and you really didn't get to know anyone in depth, then you can make more blanket statements of, thank you so much for your time. I loved learning XYZ about the company. I think this is a great fit, particularly for this reason. I look forward to next steps. And keep it very optimistic. I look forward to next steps. Even if in the back of our mind we're doubting ourselves, sometimes we can be our own biggest critic. Does that resonate with anyone? So making sure that in our self-presentation and in our, certainly our written communication, so we keep things upbeat, and yeah, that we're giving ourselves a fair shot, and knowing that we may not be perfect, but we could still be a really great fit for that role that we're going for. Okay, so Ashley asks, if I don't know all the interviewers, and actually we're in Q&A right now, so this is perfect. If I don't know all the interviewers, would it be appropriate if I email one of the main interviewers? Yeah, so this really depends on how many interviewers you are working with. I like to try to email all of them individually. And one way you can do this is typically people that work at the same company will have the same format, same email format. And let's say that it's first initial of your first name and then dot last name at companyname.com. That's super common. So just kind of see what the format is, and you can send individuals emails just with that information. And this isn't to be confused with spamming anyone. To me, it shows that you're resourceful, that you were able to identify a structure. And maybe the structure isn't right and it bounces, but that's okay. You tried. And even if you're just able to email that person who you've already been in communication with through an existing email thread, then that's still going to serve you. Okay. Let's see. Anna asks, should you address the interviewer as Mr. Mrs. last name, or is it better to go with first name and last name? So I would say, particularly with the Ms. and Mrs., we don't know if someone's married or not. That is a reason why I like using first name and last name, especially if during the interview process, sometimes a recruiter will say, oh, you can call me Jan, instead of Jan Knight or whatever it may be. So yeah, there isn't a 100% right or wrong way. You can defer to Mr. and Ms. or Mrs., but I like using first and last name as I'm getting acquainted. Okay, so I know some of us have to drop off. We've gone over time, but I hope this has been helpful. So I wanted to let you know how you could stay in touch after these remote interviewing skills that we went into. So I would love to invite you to stay in touch. And I actually have a networking remotely resource sheet. So I did mention that networking is a really great way to ensure that that you're in a good place to get these interviews without necessarily applying online even. So go to stephanietoma.com/freebie to get that resource sheet with a little bit of an overview of what we went over, a couple things, but it does go into more depth. And then Confident Introvert, the book. So the book title is called Confident Introvert, A Practical Guide to Connecting with Others at Networking Events and Beyond. So if you identify as an introvert or not, there will be email templates for follow-up and for nurturing connections and leading with it, going into your career feeling more self-assured and confident, and being able to translate that into career success in a really tangible way. So I highly encourage you to check that out. It's on Amazon. The paperback book sold out, so don't worry if you like to read physical paperback copies. You can actually reach out to me directly, and I might be able to get you a copy in advance, or just stay tuned on Amazon. The ebook is available instantly. So yeah, that's just another resource for you to have in your toolkit. And let's see. Okay, I actually do see a couple more questions, so I'm just going to answer them while we're here. So Anna asks, do you ever take notes during an interview, either in person or virtual, or is that not appropriate? So, I think it is appropriate. And you can even say, so that, because I will say that if you don't mention that you're taking notes, it could be misconstrued as you lacking focus. So what you'll want to do is maybe at the beginning of the interview, just mention, hey, I do have a notebook out and I may be taking notes during our interview. Is that okay? And I mean, very rarely, you will not get a no answer to that question, but it's just a courtesy to ask. So Ashley asks, if I'm a rising sophomore in high school, would it be appropriate if I list awards and leadership experiences from middle school? I would say yes, work with what you've got, especially if you are a sophomore in high school. It doesn't make sense to limit your leadership experience to only your freshman year. I think it's completely fine to dip into those middle school experiences. And Ashley asked, is your book available at Barnes & Noble? Not yet, but let's recommend it in there. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions as we close out here. Because again, I would like to be respectful of your time, and I know that we've gone over. Okay. So Elizabeth says, in my resume, I've included about half of my leadership experiences with only 2 to 3 bullet points each. However, it's still much longer than a page. Should I keep cutting it down? Yes. Especially when we have less than 10 years of experience. Think of our resume not as an in-depth overview. And I will say, if you do have that much robust information, I think that's great. There is a technique called a master, the master document, right? Where some people have resumes that are a dozen pages long. So, but that's not the one that you share. That's just for you to know what your accomplishments have been. And it's something that you can always pull from to make different versions of your resume depending on what you're going for, especially if there are a couple of different areas of focus that you have in your career. Okay. And okay, what's the difference between a CV and a resume? So I love that question. So my understanding is that it's pretty much the same. Yeah, pretty much the same, especially in this day and age. Resume is the term that you'll see that's more modernly used. All right. So I've loved how interactive you all have been. And again, I encourage you to stay connected. Don't be a stranger. You saw my Instagram handle, Stephanie M. Toma, on every slide. I'd love for you to share on Instagram your favorite takeaway from our session today. And oh my gosh. Okay, before I sign off, I can't help it. I want to answer your questions. Is it a bad sign for employers if you're active on social media? No, it's not a bad sign, but it just depends on what you're posting. If you're posting a lot of party pics where maybe, you look a little bit under the influence of something, that is something to be aware of and reconsider. So yeah, there will always be more questions. Yeah, so I do see more questions coming in, and I would like to say, if you have additional questions live, ask them to me in an Instagram post, and I will answer them live. So shout them out in a post directed at me. And yeah, because I do think that we could probably have another hour of Q&A, and I would really appreciate and enjoy that. But also be mindful of your time. I think that we did go over the fundamentals of remote interviewing, and I'm so excited for you on your journey of getting your next internship or getting your first job. This is a really exciting time to be flexible as the world of work shifts, and you are at the beginning of figuring out exactly what you'd like to do. Maybe you already have an idea, and I really hope this was helpful for you. And I just really would also encourage you, find me on Facebook. All of my events, I host a lot of really great fun webinars and things. If you go to facebook.com/StephanieToma, and if you had a great experience, you can always leave a review on that page as well, so that other people know, like, hey, like, you might want to check out some of the stuff she's doing. And also, I would love to give a big thank you to Girl Genius Magazine for inviting me to speak on this topic. I typically speak on networking, and this was a really great opportunity to share some remote interviewing tips with you all. So this presentation wouldn't exist without Girl Genius really making this happen. So thank you so much for having me. And I hope that you all just feel empowered and informed. And yeah, I will see you at the next virtual event. Bye, everyone.